Hey guys, thanks for watching Shape, where we consider what has shaped our thinking, shaped our culture, and by extension, what is shaping our future. Today we're going to touch on the very interesting topic of science and God. Science and God. Hasn't science proved there is no God? Has that happened? Hasn't science proved evolution, and therefore there's no need for a creator, and by extension, so what about God? Like, has that happened? This is certainly the prevailing worldview of our popular culture today, and it's very different to the biblical perspective. The biblical perspective is, there is a God, He created everything. It's not obscure in the Bible. The heavens declare the glory of God. Paul in Romans 1:20 says this, for since the creation of the world, For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So the idea is this, look, you look around, you look at nature and you go, it has definitely been designed. God did it. Unfortunately, the current worldview is that we study nature and we find that it came into being itself. So, which is it? Which is it? So, I'm going to give you 3 reasons that I believe that the popular perspective is actually wrong. Okay, the first reason is science does not tell us why. Science doesn't tell us why. Science tells us how. Science is very helpful when it tells us how. It tells us how the body works, that's biology. It tells us how bodies move, objects move in relation to one another and gravity, and that's called physics. It tells us how, at a microscopic level, things are formed, that's chemistry. But it doesn't tell us why they exist. It doesn't tell us what our lives are for, what the purpose is for. It doesn't tell us what's right and wrong. It doesn't tell us why we are here. Now, some of these biggest questions are outside of the reach of science. John Lennox, in his book, God's Undertaker, considers this question, this idea, with respect to baking a cake. He says, science can tell you how a cake is baked. You can talk about the mixture of different ingredients and how when you add heat, an endothermic reaction takes place. That is, it takes in heat and it bakes. All right. So science can tell you what's going on there, but it can't tell you why the cake was made. As it turns out, it was my birthday and my auntie made that cake for me because she liked me. It can't tell you why. It can tell you how, but it can't tell you why. Just like that, some of the biggest questions that we have in life, why we are here, why does my life matter? Science doesn't have those answers because it doesn't tell you why. It tells you how, and it's incredibly useful because we need to know how so we can make the world work better for us. We can make the world a better place. But some of the deepest questions it still doesn't answer. Science does not tell us why. Now, another reason why the popular view is wrong is that the first Christians, did you know this? The first scientists, were Christians. The first scientists were Christians. Stephen Meyer, in his lecture, God and the Origin of the Universe, which I've linked in the comments below, and I want to encourage you to go and watch that. He makes the point that the scientific method was developed with the understanding that God is a God of order, which is a Christian idea. Science finds its roots in Christianity. See, the logic goes something like this. God is a God of order, and so when God created nature, He created it to have order. And we are made in the image of God, and so He's given us a mind that can comprehend order. So let's test it. Let's observe it, let's measure it, and let's develop the laws of nature, that we can understand how nature works. And it's all a theological, or derived from a theological understanding of God, that God is a God of order. And so it was from Christianity, the worldview of Christianity, that science finds its roots. It should be no surprise that the early scientists, the famous guys, the Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, Euler, Pascal, these guys that I learned about when I was in uni doing my engineering degree, they were all devoted Christians, because Christians were the first scientists, and science finds its place in a theological setting. So that's the second reason that I believe the popular perspective is wrong. Now, the third is to consider the fact that evolution, even though it's just put forward as a fact in all our textbooks and so on, it's just the way to go, it's actually still a theory that many evolutionary scientists find issues with this explanatory, what they would call explanatory power, which means that it doesn't explain a lot. There's a lot of unknowns about it. Okay, it's still a theory. I've linked a really good video below. Also, Stephen Myers talking to some academics in mathematics and other in other fields, talking about the problems around Darwin's theory. So you may have heard of Darwinism, natural selection, selection of the fittest, and it's basically biological evolution, adaptation, and so on. And they talk about the mathematical issues. Basically, when random mutations happen, they don't happen positively, they happen negatively, right? Things kind of tend towards chaos. They don't just you don't stick a dynamite in a pile of wood and then it explodes and just builds a house. You don't, that's not what happens, but that's kind of what evolution is like. It's stuff just happened randomly and it became better. That's not how the world works. And so they talk about the mathematical issues around these concepts. And so there are three things. There's a lot more reasons why this idea of science versus God, or science has killed God, is just not a good thing. But those are three things that I want to share with you today. Science does not tell us why. Christians were the first scientists, and evolution is a theory. So these are some things to think about when we're considering science in our modern world, and how we, as the modern culture, thinks about it, as well as God. Thanks for watching. Check out those videos below. Highly recommend them. They will help you in your understanding of how our world is being shaped. Take care.